Tonight, Sandy Peggy judgment. A nurse who complained about sharing a changing room with a transgender doctor wins part of her employment tribunal. Also tonight, residents of RAAC-affected homes in Aberdeen say they feel intimidated as pre-demolition work begins ahead of the deadline for the council's offer for their homes. Scots fishing skippers predict a challenging year ahead with new catch limits, with the EU and Norway set to almost halve cod quotas. While in sport, Aberdeen continue their Premiership resurgence with a 3-1 win at Dundee as they move into the top 6. Good evening, I'm Norman MacLeod and this is the STV News at 6, live from Aberdeen. The nurse, Sandy Peggy, who complained about sharing a female changing room with a transgender doctor who identified as woman, has won a partial victory in her employment tribunal against NHS 5. A judge upheld her claim of harassment by the Health Board, but dismissed allegations she was a victim of discrimination and victimisation. Sandy Peggy said she's relieved and delighted after an agonising 2 years. NHS 5 says it will now take time to work through the detail of the judgment. Here's Gordon Cree.
When Sandy Peggy came to the Employment Tribunal hearing in Dundee to give evidence back in February, it made national headlines. The case a symbol of the often divisive debate over gender identity. The substance dates back to 2023 at the Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy. Mrs Peggy raised concerns about a transgender doctor, Beth Upton, being allowed to use a female changing room. After a confrontation on Christmas Eve that year, Sandy Peggy was suspended and Dr Upton made an allegation of bullying and harassment and cited concerns about patient care. An internal investigation cleared Mrs Peggy in July 2025. At the Employment Tribunal, the nurse argued she was entitled to a female-only changing space and that Dr Upton was a man, while NHS 5 said it was following the guidelines at the time of people using the facilities in line with how they identified. Now the tribunal has ruled the Health Board harassed Sandy Peggy by failing to revoke Dr Upton's permission to use the changing room after the nurse complained and until they'd been put on different rotas where they wouldn't be working together. It also said the board had taken an unreasonable length of time to investigate the allegations against her. But further claims brought against both Dr Upton and the Health Board that Mrs Peggy was victimised and discriminated against were dismissed. Sandy Peggy says she's relieved and delighted after an agonising 2 years. NHS 5 says it will now take time to work through the detail of the judgment to understand fully what it means for the organisation. Today's judgment isn't the end. A further hearing will take place to discuss what steps are needed to remedy the situation. And Sandy Peggy's legal team has already lodged a number of further claims against senior NHS 5 managers over their handling of her case.
Well, Gordon, who's been following the tribunal, joins us now from Edinburgh. What's been the reaction, Gordon?
Well, this is a complex and lengthy judgment which has been issued today. It will clearly take all the parties involved some time to digest. It is essentially a narrow victory for Sandy Peggy on limited grounds, but ultimately she has taken her employer to court and come away with something that she can call a victory. And in the last few minutes, her solicitor has read out a statement giving her reaction.
On behalf of Sandy Peggy, she'd like to say the following. I am beyond relieved and delighted that the tribunal has found that my employer, Fife Health Board, has harassed me on 4 separate counts after I complained about having to share a female-only changing room with a male colleague. The last 2 years have been agonising for me and my family. The tribunal's findings that Fife Health Board harassed Sandy Peggy is a huge win for a tenacious and courageous woman standing up for her sex-based rights.
And what happens next, Gordon?
Well, we will hear more from Sandy Peggy and her legal team later in the week as they digest to consider their response to it. We've also heard from the Scottish Government, who say that ultimately this is a matter for the Health Board, but the Scottish Government respects the outcome of the Employment Tribunal, and they too will take time to consider the judgment in full. So plenty more to come on this, but today Sandy Peggy has won a partial victory over NHS Fife.
Gordon, thank you. Residents of RAAC-affected homes in Aberdeen say they feel intimidated with pre-demolition work starting before the deadline for owners to decide on the council's final offer for their homes. Work to strip out the impacted buildings began this morning. Residents have until Wednesday to decide whether they'll accept the council's offer. Finlay is in Torry for us this evening. Finlay, residents there are still angry.
Yeah, Norman, certainly, as you said, they feel intimidated by the pre-demolition works that are taking place, crucially days before the deadline that they have to accept the council's offer to buy back their RAAC-affected properties. Now, as you can see, work has begun. This was Gowdalness Road this morning, around a dozen or so demolition workers in the early stages of stripping those empty homes. But of course, not all the homes are empty. Many residents still live in them, and of course, some have still to respond to the council's final offer. Now, there are around 140 privately owned RAAC-affected homes that the council are trying to buy back. And while some offers have been accepted, for those that haven't yet accepted the offer, or indeed for those that have still to move out, they say they're facing Christmas in a demolition zone.
It's everyone's feeling now. It's just that's more intimidation and kind of scare tactics from them. They've dragged this out for 3 years, and then they've kind of had the cheek to give us a deadline, and now they're starting knocking down or ripping places out. Go back 4 years ago, you'd have seen Torry was lit up with Christmas lights. Barely even a bauble going about now.
Now, in October, an additional £10 million of funding was given to the local authority by the Scottish Government to finally give residents a fair offer for their property. Now, the campaign group say the vast majority of owners have accepted or begun engaging with the council about that offer. For those that haven't, they still have 2 days to do so. Now, there's also been a number of safety concerns in recent times, with residents saying there's been an increase in break-ins and vandalism. As we understand it, the council has put in place additional security and fencing while the works are ongoing. But in reality, that's going to give residents here very little peace of mind for what they see as a community being torn apart. Norman.
OK, Finlay, many thanks. North East skippers are predicting a challenging year ahead, with new catch limits with the EU and Norway set to nearly halve cod quotas. The new deal follows weeks of negotiations. It was feared Scottish fishermen would not be able to catch any cod following scientific advice published earlier this year. Hayley Beaumont reports.
Cod is a key stock for Scottish fishermen, and this year the fleet was holding its breath on quotas for the next year. It's been cut by nearly half.
I would say you'll probably maybe see guys maybe targeting different species, different areas, and if you've got 44% cut, it's eating at the quota you're going to be catching throughout the year. So if I can't catch that, I can't catch that. The other species, well, they're less price, and so it's pretty hard to try and actually gauge a business plan. It's like a roller coaster, it's up and down every time.
The UK government says the trilateral deal is worth nearly £400 million and also includes a plan to help the most vulnerable fish stocks recover. But one species in particular has caught the headlines this year as negotiations got underway. The best catch limit for cod for next year has been widely debated in recent months. The scientific body ICES had suggested a zero catch cod limit in order to protect the most vulnerable species in the southern North Sea. That was welcomed by conservationists, but the Scottish Fleet said those proposals were simply unworkable. Then, as negotiations began, it was proposed that perhaps it could be cut by 70%. So this 44% figure that we have reached in recent days, well, that is being seen as a bit of a middle ground. But the debate on how exactly that number is reached for the years ahead, well, discussions on that are set to continue. Currently, cod stocks in the North Sea are looked at as a whole. They used to be considered in 3 different areas.
There's so much uncertainty that if we continue to use it as a 3-stock approach, it is going to be difficult for the sector. So I think we need to take a good hard look as to whether we can solve the issues, and if not, go back to the way we used to assess.
Cod is also a key ingredient for the nation's favourite food, fish and chips. A reduction in the catch could have an effect on price.
Cod catches are coming down elsewhere, like North Norway and other places. So it's a supply and demand issue. As cod comes down in terms of the amount landed, the price will go up. But it's a quality product and people should be willing to pay the price for it.
The fleet has broadly welcomed quotas for prawns and haddock, which remain largely unchanged. The trilateral agreement between the EU, the UK and Norway is a big deal, setting the tone as talks between the UK and other coastal states continue this week. Hayley Bomma, STV News.
The First Minister believes energy bills could be a third cheaper in an independent Scotland. John Swinney also attacked the UK government for failing to remove the windfall tax on oil and gas companies. However, he refused to outline how he would persuade the Prime Minister to grant a second independence referendum if the SNP wins a majority of seats in next year's Holyrood election. Here's our political correspondent, Ewan Petrie.
With echoes of campaigns past, the First Minister set out the SNP's case for reducing energy bills through independence.
Just as it was Scotland's oil, today we say loud and clear, it's Scotland's energy.
The SNP believes winning a majority of seats next May will be enough to force the UK government to grant a second independence referendum.
You cannot stand in front of voters and guarantee that a majority in that election will lead to a second independence referendum. You can't offer that guarantee to voters.
Well, what I can say to voters is that there was a precedent in 2011 which was accepted by the UK government and the UK parties that Scotland had manifestly expressed a desire to decide on her constitutional future.
That doesn't offer a guarantee.
And what I'm saying to the people of Scotland is that if we're concerned about our situation in the UK, where we've got sky-high energy bills, where we've been taken out of Europe against our will, we've got to set out what matters to us.
You did say in your conference speech that no one knows what tactics you would deploy in that situation of achieving a majority next year. Is there a secret plan?
There are various tactics that I can deploy to advance our arguments, and I'll set them out when we're in a position to use those tactics. There's no value in setting that out in advance. What I'm saying to people in Scotland...
Voters deserve to know what they are in advance?
Well, what I'm saying to voters is that they've got the opportunity to vote for the SNP emphatically in May of next year.
So they just have to put faith in you that you will get beyond that?
Well, what the voters know about me is that I am absolutely determined to deliver Scottish independence if that's what the people of Scotland want.
Opposition parties accuse the First Minister of using independence to deflect from more pressing issues.
John Swinney doesn't want to talk about his record, he doesn't want to talk about the NHS, he doesn't want to talk about our skills system, our schools, policing, or housing, all issues that he has direct responsibility for. And it shows you he is a low energy, no ideas First Minister.
The majority of Scots voted against it. So the thing that we want to do and the thing that I want to do now going into next year and the next election is give people what they want. Let's look at education, let's look at health and let's look at housing and let's look at people's energy bills.
Energy costs are already proving a key election issue, with less than 5 months until polling day. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Police are carrying out extensive inquiries after a woman was raped in Kirkcaldy. The attack happened between 2 and 5 a.m. yesterday morning at a wooded area behind Abbott's Mill. Officers are carrying out high-visibility patrols. Detectives described it as a terrible ordeal for the woman. Anyone who saw anything suspicious is asked to contact the police. Almost 300 workers at a factory in Fife have downed tools in a dispute over terms and conditions. Unite members at Bosch Rexroth took to the picket line this morning after rejecting the latest company proposals. Saul Sivrite was there.
The weather on the picket line summed up the mood of 280 workers at Bosch Rexroth in Glenrothes this morning as they began a week-long strike in a dispute over terms and conditions.
Well, they had layoff, short-time working and annualised hours where workers would actually end up getting into debt and having to work the hours back, maybe even at a weekend away from the family. So it's just not good what they're proposing, and the workers definitely won't accept this.
They're trying to change our contracts and basically change us to a short working contract. So if the company's got less work, then we can potentially be told to work less. For a 9-week period, we could be told to work a day less every week, and then you're either going to have to take a shorter pay, or you're potentially going to be due them a lot of hours that you're going to have to work back, and none of us want this.
This factory manufactures parts such as gears and brakes for the construction industry. Unite the Union says the German-owned company wants to cut pay by up to 22% a month through 9 months of short-term working. The union says the latest offer also proposes an annualised hours system, which could leave workers up to 37 hours in debt. The system means that if a worker is paid for more hours than they've worked, the company can reclaim the overpayment.
Well, the workers will tell you themselves, they use up their holidays if there's any dips in the company orders, so they help out a lot. All through COVID, these workers were in and clapped by people. But now, because there's a bit of a drop, they want the workers to pay for this.
Dawn has worked here for 20 years and says the proposed changes are shocking.
There's a lot of long-term people here, and to be told if you don't sign the contract, we'll basically be given a notice, you'll be sacked and then taken on, and don't necessarily have to rehire you. I mean, there would be no sense in me being rehired, because I'd lose all my service days, I would lose all that, so it'd be no point at all. But after 20 years, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth.
In a statement, the company said the contractual changes are intended to maintain full employment at the Glenrothes site amid disruptive market conditions. It says the measures are essential and that it remains committed to a sustainable future for the workforce. The strike is set to continue for the rest of the week. Saul Sebright, STV News.
A man's appeared in court after a woman died at a flat in Dundee. Police were called to Milnebank Road just before 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. The woman was found unresponsive and was pronounced dead a short time later. 42-year-old Andrew Bayek made no plea when he appeared at the city's Sheriff Court. He was charged with assault to severe injury along with threatening and abusive behaviour. He was remanded in custody. 4 people, including a 15-year-old, have been arrested and charged after police raided a property in Dundee. Officers found heroin and cocaine at the address in the hill town on Saturday. The teenager, as well as a 59-year-old woman and 2 men aged 40 and 50, have been charged. A report will be sent to the Procurator Fiscal. STV staff, who are members of the National Union of Journalists, have voted 94% in favour of strike action over the broadcasters' plans to make compulsory redundancies and cut news programming. The company says the result is disappointing and that its proposals will ensure STV News is financially sustainable. Regulator Ofcom is expected to launch a public consultation over the broadcasters' plans to create a single Scotland-wide edition of the News at 6. That takes us to the sport now with Chris.
STV Sport, sponsored by the C.R. Smith Christmas Sale.
A very good evening to you all. Now, Aberdeen manager Jimmy Tilleen praised his players' growth and resilience as the 3-1 win at Dundee saw the Dons climb into the top 6 for the first time this season. Despite the defeat, there were positives for the home side, but converting chances is still the D's Achilles heel.
Aberdeen are up to 6th. Their no frills back to basics ploy the end of that miserable winless start to the season, now showing more fruitful outcomes based off a far more solid defensive foundation. Here, a double, or should that be a doublé, from French midfielder Adil Aouchiche put the Reds 2 up in the first half. And for the want of a bit less spin, Stuart Armstrong's free kick could have boosted that tally by the break. Aberdeen are not a 90-minute team yet though, and Dundee rallied. Tony Yogan and Jan Danda impressed, and they reduced the deficit from a well-taken corner, Ryan Astley nodding in at the near post. As the D's pressed for an equaliser, they were undone with a touch of class. Former Scotland teammates Stuart Armstrong and Kevin Nisbet linked up, with the Dons' number 15 poking an audacious finish past McCracken for 3-1.
Top 6 now, is that the aim, to stay there and keep climbing?
Again, I haven't think about it, I haven't seen the table yet, but for us it's again, the season is so long. It's so many games, and then you have the Scottish Cup and you have Europe, so we have to focus game by game, but the most important for us is that we get a little bit better every week, and now we have scored 6 goals in the last 2 games and still been stable. So we just have to keep building and be humble and try to improve all the time.
There were some unfortunate scenes at the end of the game. Den stewards did as they're instructed, but there was no malice as Aushish tried to see his father and cousin, who travelled over from France to watch. Cool heads and common sense was required, but this was a storm in a teacup. Aberdeen up to 6, Dundee still clear of Livy at the bottom.
I've got no complaints about many aspects of our performance today. A couple of key moments cost us, but in general, it was a really positive performance. I know people look at the result, of course, but you know, from a manager's perspective, we want to win these games, but equally I look at the things that we've been working towards, and they were really evident in our performance.
Dundee can take heart from a display where they were good in parts. A nasty foot injury for Joe Wesley suffered in a coming together with Jack Milne, a blow for the in-form attacker. Dundee United just can't catch a break at the moment, but the defeat in Paisley was less of a hard luck story than others in their 6-game winless run. The Terrors dominated possession and passed around the Buddies, but when it came to taking chances, the Paisley Saints did and United didn't. Again, a keeper error was pounced upon, but Dave Richards didn't miss any chances to score. That is on his outfield teammates.
We cannot expect to be going into games having to score 2 and 3 goals every week to try and get 3 points. It's just not feasible. So we have to defend better than what we're showing at the moment. You know, we've got some good players in the team. We know that, some technical players that are very exciting to watch. But at this moment in time, you know, we need to work harder as a unit and you know, take a bit more pride in keeping those clean sheets, because that was something that we were very good at last season, and that was what got us the success that we had.
Elsewhere, Hearts are clear at the top after spoiling the party for Celtic's new manager Wilfried Nancy with a 2-0 win at Parkhead. If the Jambos bubble had burst, they've clearly just found a new bubble. Now let's talk about the World Cup. And SFA Chief Executive Ian Maxwell's described Scotland's World Cup draw as magnificent and believes Steve Clarke's side absolutely have a chance of reaching the knockout stages. Well, Scotland play Haiti in their opening match in June before taking on Morocco and the mighty Brazil. He was speaking to Raman Bardwaj.
Scotland.
The countdown to the World Cup is well and truly on after Scotland learned their group opponents. And for the 5th time, the national team will face Brazil at the finals, 28 years after our last meeting with the 5-time champions.
Collins for Scotland. 1 goal apiece.
Magnificent. It's the biggest sporting event in the world. We're playing one of the biggest teams in the world. We've got a group that's going to be very competitive. I mean, what more can we want when we look forward to next summer? I'm sure there'll be Tartan Army fans, Scotland fans across the world, and that'll really have whetted their appetite for what's ahead in 2026. I wanted to avoid UEFA. Nations, we play them enough. I think the football fans will be the same. And it was about a big pot 1 team and teams we can be competitive against, and we've certainly got that.
Steve Clarke and assistant head coach Stephen Naismith have remained in America, looking at venues to determine where the squad should be based on America's East Coast. For the Tartan Army, the scramble is on to get tickets.
You know, we've got 38,000 within the Scotland Supporters Club. They'll all be clamouring for tickets. There's another, 5.5, 6 million in Scotland. All the expats over in the States that will be desperate to get to the games. But listen, it's a great problem to have, and that shows you as I said, the power that football has, the reach that football has, that everybody's going to be desperate to get to these matches.
The Scotland fans travelled to Germany for last year's Euros in the tens of thousands. While making the trip across the Atlantic for the World Cup isn't as straightforward, many won't want to miss out on what will be a grand occasion.
Over 6 months away, I'm beside myself with excitement already.
STV Sport, sponsored by the CR Smith Christmas Sale.
Well, let's turn to the weather now. And Joe, welcome back. There's some stormy weather ahead of us for tomorrow.
There certainly is, Norman. We've got some heavy rain during the first part of the day, some large waves as well, and then we've really got these winds strengthening. This is Storm Bram. These winds will be strengthening to severe gale, even storm force for the latter part of Tuesday, all around this area of low pressure. That really getting going through Tuesday evening into the night, and the low pressure nudging its way northwards, so they go through Tuesday night into Wednesday. So let's have a look at the forecast.
A breezy morning will be followed up with a flurry of fresh delights for lunch. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
So this is Storm Bram, this low pressure deepening as it moves west of Ireland. That weather front is the one going to bring all of the heavy rain through Tuesday morning, and then spinning around that we will see these gales, particularly across western Scotland, but still the strong winds reaching across towards the east as we go through the day, and then that low pressure beginning to clear away northwards during Wednesday. So for now, we've got a quieter evening and night. We will see some clear skies way towards north to begin with, but then that cloud increasing, the first hints of that low pressure. So underneath all of that, a few spots down into single figures, but for many sticking around 6 Celsius by night with only light winds. Quickly on Tuesday morning, there's all of that wet weather. We do have a yellow rain warning from the Met Office, as we could see some localised flooding. It's already been wet and there's more rain to come through Tuesday morning, but as that pulls away northwards, then we see those winds strengthening, but it is going to feel exceptionally mild as we go through Tuesday. That air is coming up from Spain, so temperatures around 13, perhaps 14 Celsius if you see some brightness. As we go through the night, that storm will be raging across the northwest of Scotland. That low pressure moving away northwards should leave some brightness for Tayside and just 1 or 2 showers. Goodbye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Well, that's it. Have a good evening.